This is Naomi Scott's film, and this is probably the best performance of her entire career thus far. Now, I've always really liked Naomi Scott as an actress. You know, maybe not every single thing that she's been in has been great, but she's usually like one of the standout things in whatever she appears in. I thought she was really good in Power Rangers. Super underrated film, by the way. Let's go ahead and move on to my review for Smile 2. So I'll admit at the top, I was wrong about Smile, as were many other people back in 2022, the distant year of 2022. Before seeing the movie, I, like others, thought the trailers and marketing for that film was absolutely ridiculous and just downright goofy. It looked bad. The trailers and teasers made the original Smile look like some of the worst of Blumhouse's horror films, on the level of recent things like Fantasy Island or Truth or Dare, which even had what I assume to be the same unintentionally funny smile that would appear on so many of the characters' faces. It just didn't look good. But early reactions to that movie were pretty positive. And, you know, I ended up going to see the film. And while it wasn't my favorite horror film of that year, you know, since we got films like X and Pearl and Barbarian in 2022, and it had a familiar, you know, gimmick of an entity stalking and haunting a person, you know, similar to such films as The Ring or It Follows. I ended up really enjoying the movie, and I found it to be well-directed, acted, and, you know, just having a number of well-executed, spooky moments, some good scares along the way. You know, it was also a big commercial success, and, you know, a sequel was quickly greenlit. And while I haven't exactly been blown away by the trailers or the marketing materials for Smile 2, I definitely didn't have the same level of misgivings or skepticism as last time, especially since Parker Finn, you know, the original director and writer, was returning, along with the rest of his, you know, creative producing team. So I went into Smile 2 with, you know, pretty reasonable expectations and with the hope that Finn could deliver just another entertaining horror film again. And I'm very pleased to tell all of you that he has done just that, you know, despite so much of the story and plot feeling similar to the original. However, you know, before getting into the nitty-gritty details of the film, I do want to provide some context for you guys, obviously. And the film starts not long after the events of the original and initially follows some very familiar smiling faces. But it primarily focuses on a pop singer named Skye Riley, played by Naomi Scott, who, after witnessing a brutal death, is pretty much plagued by the parasitic smiling entity and begins to experience a series of increasingly disturbing events as she, you know, goes on tour and hallucinates. First of all, it's very obvious that Parker Finn has gotten even better as a director. While the previous Smile was certainly well-directed and has some very well put-together sequences, you know, it feels like he's constantly pushing himself to do even better in this film. Just on a technical level, the movie looks even better than the first in terms of lighting and cinematography and just the horror sequences themselves. Everything feels a little more elaborate. And he's not just doing the exact same type of scares or sequences that he did in the original movie. There's also more action in this movie, which makes me think like you could probably make a pretty good action director. And those scenes are well choreographed and very fun. But he also creates some horror scenarios that are certainly more creative than the first movie. And a lot of these scenes are both scary, funny, and even more overwhelming, but not in a negative way. Not in a negative way at all. He's playing around with a lot more extras in this film, a lot more bodies, if you will, and he's using them to create some very bombastic scenes and sequences. Thought that on a technical level, the film is great. Don't really have any issues with it in that regard. Now, outside of the technical aspects, the movie's cast, I think, is doing a very good job. Everyone from Rosemary DeWitt, who plays Naomi Scott's mother in the movie, to Ray Nicholson, who I just recently learned is actually the son of Jack Nicholson. And wow, he definitely inherited his father's iconic smile, which apparently they've been just using throughout the film's marketing. Like a lot of the smile stuff you've been seeing, that's him. That's the guy. And he plays Skye's boyfriend, dead boyfriend in the movie. But this is Naomi Scott's film. And this is probably the best performance of her entire career thus far. Now, I've always really liked Naomi Scott as an actress. Maybe not every single thing that she's been in has been great. But she's usually like one of the standout things in whatever she appears in. I thought she was really good in Power Rangers. Super underrated film, by the way. She played the Pink Ranger in that. And she treated it seriously. And I think what they wrote for her was great. And I thought her performance was really solid. And then she's also been in things like, Aladdin. She played Jasmine in that movie, and she was one of the better aspects of that film, in my opinion. I don't like that movie, but I thought she was one of the better things. Did that Charlie's Angels movie, too. But, overall, I've always liked her. But like Sochi Bacon before her, who is our previous protagonist in the original film, she just does a great job with the material that she's given. It's a very multifaceted performance, and it's a very physical role. She literally throws herself into it, gets thrown around a lot too. I mean, thrown left and right and up and down, pretty much everywhere else. And I really like that. I just thought her role and what she ends up doing throughout the movie was great. It was very visceral. The movie also just looks at, celebrity in general and how that can impact a person and those around them, focusing on paranoia, like her character, someone who has suffered from substance abuse and is trying to get over that, trying to get her life back together, trying to fix her image as a singer, as a celebrity, as a pop icon, deals with, self-harm. And all this is seen through her character, through Scott's character of Skye. And, she's also complicated, and there are things that are revealed about her along the way. And at times she can be unlikable. But I think that's intentional on the part of Parker Finn. She's a more complex individual than Sochi Bacon's character. I don't mean to be dismissing Sochi Bacon. It's just clear he's like, he wanted to, play around with the character who you can kind of go back and forth on, which I thought was a bold choice. Despite all that, the movie has a lot of great stuff in it, no doubt. However, the film does have one big issue, in my opinion, and it's the same problem that I think the first film has, and that's the fact that the movie's story, its structure, it's just all very familiar. We've seen this type of thing before. And though the last film had the same problem, it's kind of just heightened in my opinion because it's the sequel. And we see it repeating certain things. The movie itself just becomes very predictable. So much so that you can just kind of guess exactly what's going to happen at the end of the movie, really after the first act. I mean, hell, just by watching the trailers and reading the premise of the movie, it's kind of obvious how it's going to end. It's not enough to ruin the picture or anything. Not at all. There is some really good stuff here. But I was hoping Finn would be able to just subvert the predictability of the film structure and throw us, really all for a loop, and do something really radically different. But it just kind of goes exactly in a direction you think it will. And I mean exactly how you think it will. I think even in past times that we've covered, like the trailers, for instance, when we talked about the movie, we've talked about like, oh, this wouldn't it be funny if this is how it ends? And well, the end, I will say this about the ending though, and again, no spoilers. The ending and what it sets up could be really interesting, and introduces a really cool dramatic change that could make the third film just really stand out and be the most different in the franchise. And I feel like it needs to be. They can't just, do Smile 3 and just repeat what they did in 1 and then what they did in 2. And then again, it's like you got to do something different. And I feel like in the way in which the movie ends and what they set up, it's like, all right, well, this could be a really cool scenario. And I hope they can do that movie because it would have to be the most different film in the franchise. But yeah, overall, I think it's a really good horror film. It's not one of my favorites of the year. I still feel like that's reserved for stuff like most recently The Substance and Late Night with the Devil, the first one, which again really took me by surprise, obviously, but it's entertaining. It's you're not going to feel like you wasted your money. Parker Finn, his people, they come up with some really cool stuff. If anything, it makes me excited to see him, like, once he's done with the Smile films, and I think he could have, like, a really entertaining trilogy right here. Be one of the better horror trilogies, certainly one of the better modern horror trilogies in quite some time. If he does what I think he will do in the third one, I'm very excited to see what this guy is going to do in the future and just play around, like, with a completely different type of horror scenario. I love to see him go into sci-fi horror. Hell, I mean, what he shows here, like an action movie. I think to have him do like a really gritty, gnarly, bloody action film would be fantastic because you can tell he's improving as a filmmaker. So that certainly excites me. But yeah, I think most people are going to really enjoy this movie. Just go in knowing that, it does feel familiar from the first film, which, the first film itself feels familiar because of what it's borrowing from in regards to its gimmick. But it executes most of the things very well and has a good cast, and I think it's one of Naomi Scott's best performances. It makes me want to see her in more things later on, which we will. But yeah, overall, this is a really entertaining film. Highly recommend it. One of the better horror movies to come out this year, and one of the better films the last couple of weeks. So check out Smile 2. But what about you guys? I'm actually very curious. Did you end up seeing Smile 2? Did you like it? Were you more mixed on it? Was it too familiar for you? Or did you downright hate it? I know there's some people out there that really didn't like. Listen, I'll tell you right now. If you don't like Smile 1, then you will not like Smile 2. All right? Not at all. So go with, if you're going to go see the film, go with that in mind. But yeah, overall, I found it very fun and very entertaining. A good horror thriller for the month of October. But what about you guys? What do you think of Smile 2? What about you, chap? What do you think of the movie? So Nye and Viper are going to hate this. They're going to despise it. They're not going to like it. They might end up liking Naomi Scott a lot more because Naomi Scott, her character is more manic, louder than Sochi Bacon. And I could see them, vibing with her. Her just being like, because you don't know what she's going to do, and based on her history and her substance abuse and things like that, she's a little more wild. I could see that. They're kind of like, oh, this is just more fascinating to see this girl kind of lose control, throughout the entire movie. But yeah, it's very similar to the first film. I think that's the one thing that's going to maybe disappoint some people. So let's see. Smile 2 made you smirk. No, it made me smile. Made me like Smile 1 made me go, this one made me go, like a slightly smaller smile, but still a smile nonetheless. So interesting enough. It is. No, it's fun. It's fun. Like it does certain things better than the first movie on a technical level. You can see Parker Finn. He's like a much better filmmaker. I would love to go into more of the sequences, of course, but I don't want to spoil them. There's a cool thing. I'll say this. There's a cool thing done with dancers. There's a cool thing done with a lot of extras and how they play around with that. It's larger in that sense. The scares are larger in that way. And I think that's like one of the newer things, one of the more original things. It's newer in terms of the like the scares themselves and some of the choreography and the action sequences. It's just the plot. It's just the story. It's just the beats. They're similar. They're familiar. It's what we've seen this before. We saw this in the last film. Like that's what I think is its weakness. But everything else it does well. There's no doubt about that. And as I said, it ends in such a way where it's like, all right, well, the next movie has to be dramatically different because of what you just did, which makes me excited. And I will go in the Smile 3 because I think we're going to get a Smile 3. This movie looks like it's going to do pretty well. They kept it pretty cheap, much like the original film. So, people are going to go see this movie. It's going to dominate the box office. It's going to be number one at the box office, no doubt. I saw this with a packed theater of people, and they were really enjoying themselves, So, they're gonna get that third film, and I think that'll be really cool. So this is all leading up to that movie. Nice. I'm excited about that.
5 minutes later.
Space Cowboy Tommy says Naomi Scott was amazing. Yeah, she's really good. I don't want to, not give her the credit that she deserves. She absolutely does. She's one of the best things about the film. She's wonderful in the movie. Yeah, I think you really like it, Kaz. I think you're gonna like this movie a lot. That's one of the things I noticed looking at the most recent trailer. Like, I don't remember the camera moving this. Yeah, it is. The camera work, cinematography in this movie, it's frantic in the best way possible. Like, they're doing a lot of interesting little, not even little, in a lot of cases, like big things that I think are really cool. It worked for me a lot. She's one of the only things about Aladdin remake. Like, yeah, there you go. See, she's a good actress. Apparently, she's also in the lead scene from The Martian. Look at that when I watched it. I did not know that. Substance is amazing. That's my favorite horror film this year. One of my favorite movies this year. Yeah, don't go in expecting like this is on the same level as Substance. Don't. I'm not saying that. It's not. But it's a fun film. Substance and It's What Inside, which I still got to see. Even though the layers more of a fucked up comedy to me are going to be tough to beat for me this year as far as horror goes. Yeah, made me smirk. I'll see you on Senate Report Back. Nice. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. Like, the first one's very effective, and Naomi Scott is fantastic. Yeah, I'm excited to see where they go from here. Yeah, no, the way this ends sets up something that I think could be really cool, and I hope they're able to do that. But it needs to be different. They can't. The one thing that will piss me off, if they go into the third film, if they negate something from the third movie, like the big thing, and then I would be like, what the fuck? And then I would be very upset. Be like, all right, this is bullshit. But I'm hoping they don't do that. I'm hoping that they don't do that. And I don't want to say what it is. You guys can probably figure it out. You can speculate, but I was like, all right, come on now. Here's Cowboy. I have not seen The Substance yet, so I won't go saying this is the best horror film this year. Oh, The Substance is wonderful. I don't want to. That's another movie I don't want to oversell, but I highly recommend it. It was recommended to me, and I was not disappointed. Now, if you're not into body horror, if that's a little too much for you, then rest assured that The Substance will be too much for you. But if you love it, like the way I do, then you're going to be great. You're going to really enjoy yourself. And even outside the body horror aspects and the technical aspects and the practical effects and the makeup, it's a very well-told story, excellent direction, great performances across the board from Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley and Dennis Quaid. It's very well edited. It's great score. A wonderful film. One of the best movies of the year. The Smile 2 is very good. I recommend it, Chef. If, a little familiar. I know, it was like 2 years ago. I thought this came out in 2018. I know. It's just like, what? The far distant year of 2022. It's been so long. But yeah, it was a fun movie. I recommend it.